duty. I tank Uber Shaper Slam. Are you kidding me? Make sure you check the notes section for important info in the POB. I also periodically update the POB in the description if I find I missed anything or have any updates. If you have any questions, you're free to ask in my stream on Twitch or YouTube. Why play this build? For one, it reaches dot cap very, very easily compared to most dot builds. And it also manages to be pretty defensive as well. You are a true fan of melee. You really have to be in the enemy's butthole for this build. Big satisfying poison prolifs. Why not play this build? You don't like true melee. You don't like pressing your life flask every 5 seconds. Or you don't like activating buffs. So the defense of the build is 8 out of 10. If you remember to click your HP potion, it really is a huge, huge recovery. 2,000+ at minimum. Offense, 10 out of 10. There's really not many reasons to go over dot cap. I guess on Ubers it might be a little bit lower, like a 9 out of 10, but you should have plenty of damage for everything on this build. Clear speed, 8 out of 10 in tight/dense maps like Toxic Sewer. Maybe if it's really dense, it even goes up better. You just attack once and it will prolif everything on your screen. But the clear speed is very variable depending on how well rolled the map is and how dense it is and whatever. So if you're doing like a big open map with bad density, it could be really bad. It could be like 5 out of 10 at worst, because if it really is like, if you're going to be doing maps that are really open and have bad density, you should use Plague Bearer and it'll carry your clear. The core of the build revolves around Viper Strike of the Mamba, obviously. Perfect Agony, low tolerance cluster jewels socketed in voices, and alchemist marks. There's a few other things, but those are just some of the main ones. These are huge multipliers which just add up all together very, very quickly to dot cap. Voices this league are actually very cheap with the delirium changes. So you can actually go grab a 5 passive voices for like 25C or something. I wouldn't even bother with a 7 passive. If you can't afford a 5 passive, don't do this build. There's just no reason for 7 passive. The points on the tree are too tight and 5 passive voices are abundant. Incoming transmission. Make sure that you are paying attention to if there's a flask, siphon, or rare near you. And also, before jumping into the first pack of the map, click your flasks and make sure they're on, because this build relies on your flasks for many things. One of them being getting resistance capped. So let's get down to it. This build is largely buff-based. You're essentially massively buffing with skills. You're going to make sure you want to use all of these buff effects when doing bosses. Withering Step is a huge, huge, huge DPS boost. From Pathfinder, you get even more Wither effect, and Wither is just a huge multiplier for chaos damage. With Ashes, you'll be at like max Wither stacks all the time with Withering Step. It puts it to like 14, and then you... Alchemist Mark is huge. It puts down a caustic pool on the ground underneath the enemy that does a big percentage of poison damage. This can be kind of annoying with a enemy that moves a lot because they can walk out of it, but you have so much damage, they should die quickly. That's not a huge problem. Something about Alchemist Mark. I know a lot of people are going to want to automate this with Mark on hit. I did it a little bit, but what actually happens is if you automate it with Mark on hit, you have to actually hit the enemy twice for to actually put the pool down. Sometimes it did put the pool down on the first hit. Sometimes I had to hit it twice. Something to keep in mind. So I was self-casting it when I needed it. Ambush is a huge crit chance and crit multi-modifier. The Anger Raised Spectre is a huge DPS boost. Use Dark Marionette with that. I know a lot of people don't like it, but it really is just, it's good. It's a free aura. Despair, big DPS boost, obviously. Minus Chaos Res on the enemy. So a question I know a lot of people are going to have is Trickster versus Pathfinder, which is better? Personally, I think Pathfinder is just easier to set up in overall in every way. And it's cheaper as well compared to a well-rounded build compared to a Trickster. I was looking at setting up a Trickster originally, but looking at the gear and trying to squeeze out defense and DPS just seemed way worse than Pathfinder. The main upside I see of going Trickster is that you don't have to press a life flask every 5 seconds to optimally sustain your HP. If I had went Trickster, my character would not be dead right now, actually. I died to a disconnect, and my character stayed in the game for 7 seconds AFK, and I obviously couldn't press the life flask because I was AFK. On Trickster, I wouldn't have died, but probably not building your character around if you can survive a DC or not, so that is that. I think Pathfinder just all around better. You get more defense and damage on a lower budget, so obvious answer. And you also don't have to use Bino's kitchen knife on Pathfinder, which means you don't have to worry about accuracy at all, because on your weapons you can craft hits can't be evaded. On Binos, you obviously can't do that. The difference between Binos and Pathfinder, Poison, Prolif, there is no difference. They have the same radius. It's like 1.5 meters or something, which is pretty small. It sounds large, but in the game, this is actually small. Prolif is not that huge. All the enemies have to be really close together. Mandatory things for the build to start feeling good. If you do not like true in-your-face melee in your enemy's butthole, this build will never feel good to you. This is never going to feel good. You have to be crit capped or very close to crit capped if you're using Perfect Agony. Now, make sure when you're checking, if you're crit capped, unclick ambushed. It's a huge multiplier, and that's fine for single target, but you're going to want to be pretty darn close to being crit capped without ambush, because that's your clear. It's essentially your accuracy, because with Perfect Agony, your crit chance is your accuracy. If you don't crit, you're not hitting. You're going to want 2, 5, or less small passive voices. Obviously, less is better, but going below 5 passive voices is very expensive. I think it goes from like 25C for 5 passive to 60 for 3 passive. Now, the upgrade from 5 to 3 is admittedly pretty big, because this build is tight on points, but you can definitely get away with 5. I use 5. And then you're going to get 6 medium clusters with low tolerance. Notable: Ashes of the Stars. It's a huge DPS multiplier with gem quality. Viper Strike quality is huge, along with other qualities on your gems, like Withering Step. You get way more Wither stacks. Ralakesh Impatience. This is probably the least mandatory of all the uniques. It just helps your DPS and survivability by having your charges up permanently. Tides of Time helps your flash charge sustain. Lightning Coil / Doppelganger, big fizz reduction. Otherwise, you're getting not much fizz reduction. Dagger with hits cannot be evaded. This is basically mandatory unless you want to drop points on accuracy, which you don't really have those points. You should really be doing dense or closed maps like Toxic Sewers, and the build just feels 10 times better with the Poison Prolif chains. And obviously, you're going to want to get 100% chance to poison. Alright, the PoB, I'll go over it a little bit quickly. So, I've got multiple trees here. I have a crit melding version, crit non-melding. I have the ultra budget non-crit. This is actually just an import of my character I had before it died to a disconnect. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely playable, but I'd really recommend getting all the gear for Perfect Agony and swapping to that when you can. And then leveling is something else, but I did include leveling trees here. I think, okay, I didn't level with Viper Strike Mamba, but I think it would be okay. When I swapped to it in like Act 8 or something, it was okay. But really, you should level with something else probably and get your full crit gear for Perfect Agony ready and then swap. So, I mean, I'll go through leveling trees here a little bit. Just if somebody wants to subject themselves to... I mean, I don't know how bad it is. I think it should be good. I don't know, though, so don't blame me. Not recommended, but So you go through here, grab the life things, come down here, grab some movement speed. These nodes are nice for mana sustain early. Come up here, grab these life nodes, grab these, and then grab these. Normal lab is Nature's Reprisal. You could also go for Master Toxicist for the prolif, but early on there's not that many enemies, to be honest. For lab, we're going to pick up our first voices and get these low tolerance things socketed in here. Once you hit that point, you should be blasting life stuff. Oh, and then for lab, you'll pick up whatever one you didn't choose here. Grab some poison stuff here. This mastery is essentially another low tolerance. 65, I'm gonna grab this to help with mana, some life, some poison stuff, some more life. And then level 82, oh, let me see. Merc Lab, Nature's Adrenaline, and Uber Lab is Master Surgeon. I'm gonna grab some flask stuff, along with socketing our other voices down here, and some life stuff. Press if you need it. I would say even maybe a Merc Lab try and get those voices socketed in ASAP, but I don't have that in the PoB. Then level 90 non-crits just took a few nodes off of the crit non-melding. Skills, I have 2 sets, one with awakened gems and one with no awakened gems. Got a few item sets here. Notes, make sure you check the notes. I'm not going to read them all here. No fancy config for this, really. It's pretty straightforward, so don't even have any custom modifiers in this one. Bandits, you're going to kill all. You can do a Lyra early and then respec later. So Brine King, you're going to do Brine King until you get some stun reduction somewhere. Either on your flasks, some tattoos to get capped. It also makes you freeze immune if you're not using Purity of Elements yet. But when you do get those things, you should swap to Solaris or Lunaris. Lunaris for mapping, Solaris for bossing. And then Ralakesh to reduce bleed damage. I don't have it in here, but you should probably get a Corrupted Blood immunity jewel. Besides from that, I think that is about it for the PoB.